back to the Pro Series podcast. This is episode 137. Today's guest is Andrea Liebross. She is an author. She has a book called She Thinks Big. It's an entrepreneurial woman's guide to moving past the messy middle and into extraordinary. She also has a podcast called Time to Level Up. She's a business coach. We talk all about that, how people are trying to segue from their corporate job or that job that they got out of school and into their passion project, or even the time restraints that we put on our lives to get to a certain goal or get to a certain part of our career. And is it too late to change careers when you're in your 40s, 50s, whatever age? So we go over all of that. But before we get into this episode, please like, subscribe, and review the Pro Series podcast on wherever you listen to podcasts. And now I hope you enjoy episode 137 with Andrea Liebross. Andrea, thank you so much for hopping on the Pro Series podcast with me today. Excited to talk to you about all of your businesses that you do and all the side projects you do, and just to get to know you a little bit more and hopefully inspire some other listeners that are listening and they're trying to think big and get to that next chapter in their life.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here, and it's such a great topic.
Yeah, I mean, I want to start on how you got started. I know you have a book, you have a podcast, you
Yes.
coach. Like, where did Andrea start her career and how did she get to where she is now?
So the short version of that is I worked for a company. Well, my background is all in psychology and communication. Um, and I have a master's in speech pathology. I have all these
Hmm.
random things. But for 10 years, I worked for a company that sold women's clothing direct to customers. So really, they had independent contractors throughout the US set up showrooms and invite clients in by appointment only, so it wasn't open to the public, to see a line of clothes, new line of clothes every season.
Hmm.
And I was recruiting and hiring and training these new business owners, kind of almost like franchise owners in a sense, for them. And I did that for about 10 years. And after 10 years, I had had it because I had had it for a couple of reasons. Number one, I was kind of, I was pretty good. I'm pretty good at coming up with big ideas and innovative ways to do things. And I realized after a while that none of those ever got to put into play. They would really wanting to play it safe, not take any risks. And then I would have to tell these new-ish business owners, hey, that's a great idea, but no, we can't do that.
Hmm.
Or, yeah, I will 100% support you, but corporate wouldn't. And that got really frustrating. So after 10 years, I said, I'm out. And I started to explore what was next. And I dug deep into why did I stay there for 10 years? And the reason was really because what I loved most was helping these new business owners when they got to a place what I call the messy middle. Okay. So the messy middle, and I'm sure some of your listeners are there, are, the excitement of starting a new business has worn off. You actually
Hmm.
now have clients, hopefully you're profitable, and you've got lots of systems and processes in place that maybe don't work anymore because you've outgrown them. And it starts to feel pretty heavy. It starts to feel like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. How do I continue? What should I do next? And that is kind of now what I've dubbed the messy middle. And I actually really loved helping them get through that. So after I left that job, I started this current business I'm in 2018. So it's been about 6 years where I business coach, and then life gets mixed in entrepreneurs who are really in any phase of their business. So I do have some that are starting out, but then I've got some that are making over seven figures and have a team. So it's a wide variety, and I have different programs that meet each of their needs. But that's how I got started in this, where that's how I kind of got to where I am now. And then last year I wrote a book, and I don't know if anyone's ever written a book. They always want to know, like, what's your why and why are you writing the book? And I had to again kind of look deep, like, why am I doing this? What prompted it? And it really what is because I want there to be more big thinkers out there. I want there to be people who are free to go for it, to think about what they want in the future, and not get squashed like I did in that job.
Mm.
So that's how I got here.
That's something we actually kind of talked about before we started recording was how people feel stuck in a career. You graduate high school and you're you're set to pick that career for the or pick a career or a study to study for the next 4 years and then live your whole life within the same career path.
Yes,
And it is a very kind of messed up type of thing because you're not the same person when you're 18 than you are to
you are
today,
not. No,
and
you
you
totally
change
are
a
not.
lot.
Yeah, I
And
mean, it's totally true.
yeah, and a lot of people fight that urge to move because of the comfortability, or they just think it's too late to move.
Right.
And I feel like that happened to you. You changed over.
Yes.
And
Yes.
what was that moment that made you want to move over? Like, was there a straw that kind of broke the back?
The straw that broke the camel's back was this whole thing that said from that corporate job to what I'm doing now was if I have one more good idea that doesn't get put into place, I'm
Mm,
out. But then what got me into even that job in the first place was that I realized that the thing I had decided I wanted to do when I was 18, which was advertising, was not really the lifestyle that I wanted to lead. So I do have a very specific moment in that scenario when I was in my early 20s and I was working in a big ad agency in Manhattan. I call it like the Ally McBeal era. I'm dating myself, but that's where it was. And there was a woman named Gail Hollander, and I reported to Gail, and she was probably 43 and I was 25. And she had just had her first baby, and she was commuting into Manhattan on the she lived in Westchester, so she was on the train every morning for an hour and on a train every night for an hour. And I heard her, I was sitting, this is the era where you sat like in front of the desk, so I was facing her, and I heard her talking to the nanny. And I'm not going to be home until 8 or 9, and just kind of giving all these instructions. And I said to myself, I don't want to be her. I don't want to be her. I don't want to do that. I don't like this. Like, I don't, doesn't sound fun to me. Doesn't sound like where I want to be in, at that point, 15 or 20 years.
hmm
So I got out of that pretty quickly. And I went back to school and I got a master's in speech pathology, which, that lasted about 3 years. And then I started going down this path of working. Well, I had a kid in there too, but then I started working for that corporate entity where I finally left after that after 10 years. So that's this trajectory. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of entrepreneurs feel the same way I did. Like, I don't want to live the lifestyle that a corporate job gives you, but they don't know how to necessarily get out. So,
Yeah. That is
yeah,
so true. They feel stuck and then they
they
feel
feel stuck.
comfortable. I
Yes,
think
yes,
comfort is the biggest chain to your existence right there when you're in corporate world like that.
100%. Yeah, because, there's something called the motivational triad, which is like we're wired to do things that are make things easy,
Yeah.
make things comfortable, and make things efficient. And there's no ease, comfort, or efficiency in leaving a job and starting a new one or even starting your own.
hmm
So, yes,
So
you are.
are you a lot of your clients in that when they're in that middle stage, are they trying to advance their career in the career that they're already in? Or are they trying to move to a new career? What's the majority?
So, the majority of my clients, whatever they're doing now, is their second career or even third career. So,
Oh,
I've
okay.
got people that were corporate bankers. I've got people that were attorneys. I have people that were teachers. And now they're doing something entrepreneurial.
Mm,
So, they got into their business really based off of what they were passionate about,
yeah.
and they kind of just were flying by the seat of their pants. 99% of them do not have any business background, and that lasts only so long, kind of the flying by the seat of your pants sort of thing. And it usually lasts into the first cycle of the messy middle. I think we go through multiple cycles of the messy middle. So in my book, She Thinks Big, I have this, I call them these like upward spirals. So you kind of have one little tornado, then you have a bigger tornado, then you have a bigger tornado. And the messy middle, there's a messy middle in each of those, But relative to the size of your growth or the way you're growing, the messy middle gets easier and easier to handle.
Mm-hmm.
So my clients are in any one of those three spirals, depending on where they are in their business, but most of them don't really, they feel like they're not good business owners when we start working together. They don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily have all of the business principles or foundations. 99% of them only have the business plan that they had on day one. So I'm
Wow.
a big proponent of, hey, and I ask this in every consult call, do you have a business plan? And everybody says yes, sort of. There's like a yes and a sort of, or yes, I'm not sure where it is. I haven't looked at it in a while, or yes, but I don't pay any attention to it. So we have to kind of create that next version of their plan. I call that turning your vision into action. And we do what I call a vision to action intensive, which really then joins like the vision you had for this business or now have evolved into the action steps, because everybody wants to know what they need to, what should I do? Just tell me what to do.
Yeah, they need to
So
know steps and how to get
yeah.
there.
Yeah. So that's kind of what we hammer out in there. And
Yeah.
that involves, though, some big thinking, because you're thinking beyond today. You're
Mm-hmm.
thinking, and today is always, even if you say it's uncomfortable, it's comfortable in the sense that you know what it feels like, even if you don't love the feeling. Right. So today is always comfortable. You know what that feeling is, even if you don't want it to be there. The future, or accessing what I call future you, which is kind of the you 3 or 5 years from now. When you go ask that 3 to 5 year you, hey, what should I do today? They've got great ideas. Because they've already done it. Right. So they're
Yeah.
like, yeah, you should, this is where we're going here. This is what you should do today. So kind of helping them, I call it meet your future you, and then figure out how to get there with some action steps. I
Yeah.
really love doing that.
When you say future, I think there's a thing in our unspoken role in society that dreaming and achieving or setting goals is only set for the people that are young, and that you have a lot of
Yes.
life left to achieve them. So I feel like people get to a certain age and they just stop with goals or dreams or thinking, "Oh, I can't change careers now. I'm 40s. I have
Right.
kids. Like I can't change now."
Right.
Type of deal. And like their dream cannot be, they don't have enough time to conquer that dream and get to that goal. So when it comes to someone like that, what would you suggest to them? How would you help them out in that journey and kind of convince them that no, it isn't too late?
It's not too late. And I think what I would help them recognize is that a dream is actually different than a goal. So if
Mm,
you're dreaming of running your own design firm, but right now you're in banking, okay? We can we can make that dream come to life with setting goals. So I think when you're younger, you kind of think it's all the same thing.
hmm.
And it's almost like, what do I want to be when I grow up? And we don't necessarily, when you're 18, have goals that are benchmarks of progress. We just, it's like a one big discussion. But I would say to someone like that, hey, what is the dream? Like, where, and dreams are supposed to be actually kind of impossible. If you like, have you ever, do you know where the term pipe dream comes from?
I don't.
Right. All right. So pipe dream. So back in the 1800s, I'm going to say there were some humans sitting around smoking opium in pipes.
Okay.
Right. So what happens when you're smoking opium? Things start to look pretty good, right? It's like euphoric, you're kind of hallucinating. So thus was born the term pipe dreams. Okay. So if you've got a pipe dream, or someone says that's a pipe dream, that seems impossible. Yeah, it's supposed to seem impossible. That's the definition. Or it's supposed to feel like, oh my God, if I got there, that would be so awesome, but I don't know how I'm going to do it. Yeah. The guys sitting around or women sitting around smoking the pipes, they didn't know either.
Yeah.
So go kind of flush out what is that pipe dream. And then I would say the number, really what I would say is big thinkers, one of the 5 tenets of big thinking is seeking and securing support. So you're
Mhm.
probably not going to make this transition without getting some support. going back to the easy, efficient, comfortable, in order to even create any ease, comfort, or efficiency, you're probably going to need some support. Like you're not going to do it alone. And I think that is where sometimes people go wrong because they think that they should be doing this all alone or they should be able to figure it out or they're smart enough. I mean, hey, they ran a whatever company before, they can do this. But and they can do it, but I'm going to guarantee that it would go much better if you sought and secured some support.
Yeah. When it comes to there's this excuse I heard many times, and I know you probably have heard many times, is that people you try to shoot for the stars for a goal, and they always say that they're realistic. They don't shoot for goals that aren't
Yes.
realistic. What is your
Yes.
opinion on that, and what do you usually tell them?
Okay, so I think you need to have some goals that are what I follow the smarter framework. And you also have to have goals that follow the wild framework, which probably that one you're not so familiar with. So
Oh,
smarter, specific, measurable, actionable, time bound, exciting, and risky. Did I skip relevant in there? I think I skipped relevant.
yeah.
The two R's are relevant and risky.
Okay.
So relevant is better than realistic. Okay. Relevant means, all right, so if I want to work from a chair on the beach sipping a margarita for the next, 15 years, is that really relevant in my life or does that fit into the scheme right now? Like maybe you've
Hmm.
got two kids that need your attention, your time isn't all your own. Not relevant, not like right now very relevant. So that's a better benchmark or better marker than realistic because realistic is limiting.
Yeah.
Realistic doesn't take into account this risky piece of the puzzle. It's gotta be a little risky. It's gotta be a little exciting in order to keep you in the game. Like if it wasn't exciting, if it didn't give you a little thrill, then you're not gonna do it. Like you're gonna kind of give up. So there's smarter framework is one thing. And then the wild framework is another way I create goals with my clients, has nothing to do with realistic. Wild stands for the W stands for you have to be willing to suck at it. So you have to be
Mhm.
willing to not be so great at obtaining the goal. Like you've got to be willing to try things.
Yeah.
The I stands for it should be impossible and it should ignite you. So it should really light you up, like you are excited, but you're not sure how you're going to get there. That's a perfect goal. You don't have to know how you're going to get there. L stands for let it be easy. So we don't always have to make things super hard. Humans have a way of trying to make things hard. And D stands for do it for fun. It's got to be fun. There's another thing. Like goals need to be fun and they need to light you up and you need to be willing to work at it for as long as it takes, which means you're not going to be good at it in the beginning. Like you're not going to know the how.
Hmm.
So separating dreams from goals, I think is one thing. Recognizing that the kind of goal you probably were forming when you were 18 was probably more of like a dream and not a specific goal. And then if you're done with that first round of life and you want to move to that next one, really flesh out what the dream is and then let someone help you figure out what the goals are or the stepping stones are to get there.
I think that's the piece that people have the most struggle with. There's obviously those people that don't want to dream big or they want to think realistically, but there's also those people that have these big dreams, but they don't know where to start. They don't know
Right,
what's the next step type of
right.
deal, and they don't want to. And other issues, they don't want to ask for help.
Right. I think that they don't want to ask for help because a couple of reasons. Number one, they're embarrassed. They think they should be able to figure this out themselves.
Hmm.
Number two, it may cost them one of their most valuable resources. I say you have four valuable resources. Time, it might cost them time to seek out some other direction. Money might cost them some money. Energy, they're going to have to explore something that they don't know yet.
Hmm.
And relationships is another one of your most valuable resources. But they don't seek the help because they fear they're going to have to give up or dig into one of those resources. And if they're starting out, they're like, well, I haven't made any money anyway. So how am I going to start spending money on something? Or I only have a couple hours a week to dedicate to this. I'm still doing the other thing. I don't know if I have time to grow this thing. So those are really usually the reasons that they don't go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people listening probably learned something there that they, or were told or they heard something that they've been told many, many times. And they're finally it just triggering into their head. They're like, oh, maybe I should get some help. Maybe I should
Yes.
listen to that person that's been telling me to do this for years and years.
Yeah. And I think fear gets in the way. Like we're our own biggest bottleneck. I like to say you're stuck in your own peanut butter jar and it's so sticky you can't get out to read the label. Like we can't we're in our own little way. We're in our own little
Hmm.
world. And there's fear in the sense that, okay, what if this actually works and I all of a sudden become super successful? Oh my God, am I ready for that? What's that going to look like?
Yeah.
Fear of what if I invest these resources and it quote unquote doesn't work? Oh no, that's so super embarrassing. I don't want to do that. There's fear of judgment. What are people going to think if I have to ask for help and I can't figure this out on my own? And there's fear of your own confidence in yourself. Like you are not confident in yourself that you're going to be able to handle everything no matter what.
Yeah.
So in the book, She Thinks Big, I talk about the 9 most common fears of entrepreneurs. And these are a few of them.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
also think it's something that people think once they're done school, it's done. You're done learning.
Right.
And
Right.
that's
Like it's
when you
over.
screw up. Yeah. You need
Yeah.
to keep learning to get to where you want to go. You can't stop learning.
Right. You can't stop learning. You can't, um, you don't want to stop learning.
No, you shouldn't want
Right.
to.
You shouldn't want to stop. Like
Yeah.
there's so much life to live, right? Like let's learn all the things we can learn, but you haven't been in that school mode or even instruction mode or even kind of almost studying mode. Like when you first started this podcast, I mean, I don't know when it was, but whenever it was, like you had never done it before. There
Hmm.
was a time when you had never done it before. So you had to study like the art of podcasting in a
Yeah.
sense. And I think sometimes our brains just turn off from that. Like we
Yeah.
don't think we can do that anymore or should do that anymore.
Do you get a lot of people that, give it a try in business and then start to fail because they're not getting the help they need, but you see in them that they could be successful, they could actually make this work, they could be that next big thing, but they are just one step away and they give up. And then
Yep.
they come to you and you kind of like help them out.
I see that all the time. So I see, like I always say, um, I believe in you more than you believe in yourself right now. Like
Mhm.
it's almost like you're in your own peanut butter jar. And so you can't see what's going on around you. You can't read the label. I can read the label. And so a lot of this revolves around belief, right? Believing that you can do something. So
Mm.
you need a belief plan to go along with your action plan and your time plan. You've got to have a belief plan, and I'll hold the belief plan for you while you're working on the other stuff. Because your brain is like searching for evidence that this is quote unquote going to work or something's going to work. And there's no evidence yet. Like it
Yeah.
hasn't been but I've seen evidence in other ways from working with thousands of people, right? So I'll I'll vouch for the evidence, I'll hold the belief while you get to work and I guide you through, you know, you can't do everything, but what are the right things to do, right? That's another thing. It's like I don't want to do everything, but I want to do the right thing. So I have a podcast called Time to Level Up. And one of the episodes is actually a client story where she kept going back to, I can't do everything. I just can't do everything. And we got to the place of let's just decide what the next best step is. That's the right thing to do right now. It may not be the right thing to do 2 months from now, but
Yeah.
right now it is. So, but doing that on your own, you're your own biggest bottleneck. Like I need help doing it in my business.
Yeah,
right? So
absolutely.
coaches need coaches.
Yeah,
I
you
have
stop.
coaches.
Yeah, you always stop yourself for doing that next level
You
thing.
totally do. You
Let's talk
totally do.
about your podcast. When did you start it?
So I started the podcast in November of 2020.
Okay.
And since then I have published at least one episode a week, sometimes two. Um, and I started it because I wanted another way to reach audiences.
Yeah,
It is a great marketing
great
tool.
tool.
It's a great way for me to flush out my own thoughts because it really makes me think through, what do I want to say? How do I want to frame this? What's going to resonate? It helps me sort of sift through some of my own thinking. Um, and I'll let you in on a little secret. I don't know when this episode is airing, but this summer, at some point, we are going to rebrand the podcast to switch names. So right now, in whenever we're recording this, in April, it's called Time to Level Up. But sometime by the end of the summer, it's going to be called She Thinks Big, which will align with the book
The
name.
book. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if you're thinking big, you are leveling up. So
Hmm.
that's kind of the irony of it. Like, I didn't start the book until 2 years after I started the podcast, but I realized that if you're leveling up, when it's time to level up, you need to think big. So they kind of go together.
Yeah. Do you have guests or is it just you mostly talking?
I've got kind of three different types of episodes.
Okay.
I call them solo episodes. So that's just me. I've got client story episodes, which I think a lot of people find very relatable. So it's someone
Yeah.
else, sharing their journey. And then I do have some guest expert episodes mixed in. So there's
That's
kind of
very
three
cool.
different, yeah.
What
Yeah.
do you find the easiest on that? I mean, I find I was asked this on a podcast I recorded yesterday. And I always find solos so much harder because you don't have
They
anybody to bounce
are.
off of.
They are. I think solos are really hard. I think they're more labor intensive because you really got to plan out exactly what you're going to
Yeah.
say. I
Yeah.
mean, not that I write it out
Noted.
word for word, but I do have an outline. Um, but what's interesting about your question actually is writing a book is kind of like doing 5,000 solo podcast episodes. So I had a very, very hard time in the beginning figuring out A, how I wanted to structure the book, and then B, what was my voice in the book. Because what I do on a daily basis is I take the input that my clients are giving me, and then I output a question or some guidance or coaching. Like it is an exchange of information, right? It's a dialogue. A book is not a dialogue. A book is like a one-dimensional type of thing. So
Yeah.
it was really hard for me to kind of explain some of these concepts without that dialogue. So the book has a lot of client stories in there to help do that. So that was the first thing, that how it kind of was like, oh my God, this is 100 million podcasts all put together. The other thing is that podcasts are short form content.
Hmm.
So like I recorded 3 podcasts yesterday for my own podcast. They were all solo episodes. And each of those is a topic. Okay, so today we're going to explore X, and then for 20 to 30 minutes, talk about it. But then it's over, right? And then there's the next episode. And could the next episode build on the previous one? Sure, but that doesn't have to. But in a book, it's all got to flow. So what's coming first, second, third, fourth? What's the structure of the book? Well, that's long form content structure that I totally wasn't used to creating, because again, it's like, although I have a process that I work through with my clients, everybody's situation is unique and everybody's not starting in the same place. Like part A is not the same for everybody. So that was really, really hard. And it took me about 6 months just to figure out the structure, like kind of almost like your sixth grade outline
Yeah.
for the book. So
Hey,
yeah,
do you plan
but
on doing another one?
I probably will. I
Oh,
mean, I
cool.
wasn't someone that said, I want to write a book. This was not on my bucket list. Um, but I did it. And I realized there's so many other things that I could be sharing in a book, and I've seen the
Yeah.
impact it's had. The book is actually kind of written so it's written into there's three parts. There's your big mindset, your big plan, and your big results. And then there's 4 chapters in each section, and you really could pick it up and start reading it any chapter. But I realized like I had to cut thousands and thousands of words because it was just too long. So I have
Oh.
content for a whole new book.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. It's like a
Yeah,
behind the scenes book.
it's hard. It's like, I mean, the publisher was recommending 40,000-ish words. I think it ended up being 44,000-ish words, but it could have been 80,000 words. Because
Wow.
again, like in a podcast, right? You and I could talk for 5 hours. Like
Yeah.
we could just keep going, but you can't do that in a book. So,
No. What is one thing that someone has come up and said to you about your podcast or your book that you would never expect? Maybe a piece of feedback, positive feedback that you'd never expect going into creating the podcast or the writing the book.
um, what's one piece of feedback? I think something that I hoped happened and actually did, but I didn't believe it would,
Okay.
was people have said, I can just hear you when they're reading the book. I can hear you talking to me. It's as if you are talking directly to me when I'm reading the book. Like, you are
Oh,
inside my mind. Like, how did you do that?
yeah.
How do you know what I'm thinking? And it's just when they phrase it like that, it's kind of like, "Ooh, I don't know. How did I know what it's surprising." I think the other thing that's happened with the book is that I've had people reach out to me and say, "Hey, our book club is reading your book." So there's groups of people out there who are reading kind of nonfiction-ish business books. So our group, and I don't know them, we're reading your book. Would you be willing to kind of do a meet the author thing?
Ooh,
So I've done some in person, but mostly virtual kind of meet the authors for book clubs. And then that's so fun because kind of like a podcast, like I'm meeting all these new people, right?
yeah.
Creating new connections and just getting more insight into what's going on in their life and what's resonated with them. So I don't know if that really answered your question, but
No,
those
it
are some things
does.
that I've realized.
No, it
Yeah.
does. One piece of feedback I get is people when they meet me in person, they think they already know me because I think
Yep.
podcasting it
Yep.
sounds like you're in a conversation with someone. You're listening to someone's conversation. So
Yes.
you're on a more of a personal level than you are with any other type of media.
I think that's totally true. So I find a lot of times when people find me, they've found me through the book or through another podcast or whatever. And then they go binge and listen to 10 of my podcast
Yeah.
episodes or read the book, depending, like vice versa. And then once we get on a call, it's like they already know me because they've been listening to me. Right. So, well, funny story about that though. I was in the airport a couple years ago and I met someone who had been listening to me forever and she recognized like the cover art thing. So,
Yeah. Oh, okay.
right. And then she said to me, she said, I thought were going to be a lot taller than you are. So that was kind of funny. She's like, I don't know, the picture I had, I pictured you a lot taller. I'm not very tall. So that was funny.
The
But
the first time that's ever happened to you, someone actually like knew who you were that you've never met. What was your
yes,
first thoughts in that moment?
it's like, I mean, it's almost fear. Like, well, what do they think? I mean,
Yeah.
like going back to fear of the unknown or judgment, right? How would they
Yeah.
judge it? Um, then I can switch into I'm so happy that I've like made an impact in their lives. Or I mean, it is what I'm wanting to happen through these two mediums of podcasting and the book. It's happening. Like
Yeah.
this is thrilling. So I think that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, I think so many times, like when I started out, I did this more as like I said it before when we started. This is a selfish type of project because I like
Hmm.
talking to other people around the world. But sometimes I post this stuff and don't really realize how many people actually get to see it and actually
Yes.
want to see it. And
Yes.
then when people actually come up to you and say that they like it and then they know you, I'm first thinking, wait, how do I know this person? I'm going through my head. I'm like, do I know this person through work? Do I know this person through
Yeah,
school? Like, how do I know this person? I get so confused. But in reality, they're just a fan of the work that I do, and
right.
that's the coolest thing in the world.
It is. It is. It's kind of a, who knew? When you were 18, were you thinking about this? No, probably
No,
not. Right? So,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, Andrea, thank you so much for hopping on the podcast. I want to end with where people could follow you, where people could buy your book,
Yep.
and listen to your podcast.
Sure. So one central place for all of that is if you go to Andrea's with an S, links with an S.com, you're going to there find links to the podcast, link to the book, link to all the social media. But you can also hop right on Amazon and type in She Thinks Big, Andrea, and you're going to find it. There's also a workbook, and Time to Level Up, the podcast, all your favorite podcast players. And in terms of social media, probably I'm hanging out on Instagram the most.
Okay.
So that's my name too. But go to andreaslinks.com and take the quiz that is on there. So that quiz, there's two quizzes. One's going to kind of tell you if you're not getting done what you want to get done in your business, it's going to give you your productivity archetype. And then the other quiz is really more of like a business analysis. If your business isn't where you want to be, or it's not where you want it to be, then take that quiz and it's going to give you some feedback on what you should be focusing on.
Oh,
So,
interesting. That's really cool.
yes, andreaslinks.com.
Awesome. Well, Andrea, thank you again for hopping on the Pro Series podcast today. I can't wait to get this one out.
Thanks for having me.